90% of leftists are completely uneducated. I should know. I was one of them. 3 years ago, I used to doom scroll for hours. But now, in 2024 alone, I've read over 1,000 pages of political theory. So in this video, you'll learn to build a consistent reading habit from zero by copying the 4-step process that I use to learn theory and apply it in a way that's actually enjoyable. Let's get into it. Step 1. Eliminate your biggest distraction. I have a confession to make. In 2022, I built a political TikTok account to over 100,000 followers without reading a single book of theory. I used to come up with all sorts of excuses to explain why I wasn't reading. I told myself I didn't have time. I told myself I didn't have the attention span. I told myself theory wasn't important, but it was all a lie. The truth was, I was afraid. I was afraid that I wasn't smart enough to understand theory. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to find the answers I was looking for. And more than anything, I was afraid that if I committed to my beliefs, I would fail to live up to them. I know I'm not the only one who's felt this way. The question is, how did we get here? The truth is literally right in front of your face. I think the greatest roadblock to young leftists is social media addiction because it allows us to escape reality. I know this ain't what you want to hear. You came for a few tips and tricks so you can click off this video feeling productive and change absolutely nothing about your life. So don't worry, I'm going to give you this step-by-step tactical advice to build a reading habit in just a minute. But I think you and I both know that's not what you really need. What you need is to ruthlessly eliminate distractions. You know what you need to do. The reason you're not doing it is because you can escape into fantasy at will.
Oh, bro, it's not that deep. Social media is not a big deal.
I want you to do something for me, real quick. Close your eyes and imagine the face of your future grandchild. If we continue on our current path, that child will grow up in a world where crop yields are declining, where natural disasters and heat waves are much more common, and where millions of people are displaced by floods and droughts and instability. This is not some far-off future. You will live to see this. And the next time you retreat to a screen to forget about that, I want you to picture the eyes of that innocent child seeing a dying world that you were too weak to prevent, because you were curled up in the fetal position chasing a hit of dopamine. If that makes you angry, good. You still have a little bit of fight left in you. Look, the internet isn't all bad, okay? Some places are educational. I really hope this channel is one of those places, but you must understand, until you take a big step back from these platforms that are designed to rob your energy, those books you want to read are going to keep collecting dust on the shelf. When you stop letting yourself vent all your energy into the virtual world, you will be compelled to take action. Step 2, building your practice. If you want to read theory but you can't seem to do it consistently, I'm going to give you 4 concrete tactics that you can use to make reading a habit that you look forward to. Let's go. Tactic number 1, habit stacking. Think about everything in your life that you do on autopilot. You wake up, you brush your teeth, hopefully you get dressed, and you go to work or school. Wouldn't it be awesome if reading was just one of those things we did automatically? That could be you. You just have to make reading a habit first. So how do we do that? It's simple. The easiest way to build a new habit is to tack it onto an existing one. For example, I read every night before bed for multiple reasons. For one, the habit I'm chaining it to is super solid. Like, I will always go to sleep at some point during the day, right? Plus, it's an easy sell. I actually look forward to reading because it means that my day is over and I get to relax. And there's no better sleep aid than Friedrich Engels. Maybe you take the train every morning. That's a built-in 20 minutes right there. Maybe you listen to audiobooks in the car. Maybe you have a 20-minute gap between classes. Whatever your schedule looks like, the goal is to add a new habit into it. And suddenly you're reaching for your book rather than your phone. But there's one caveat. Building a habit takes time and consistency, which means you have to read every day. And I mean every day. Sounds hard, right? Nah. Tactic number 2, read daily. Daily reading is easier than you might think. It just requires a shift in perspective. Let me give you an analogy. When I really don't feel like going to the gym, I use laziness to my advantage. I tell myself I just have to show up. That's it. Just go to the gym, do a little warm-up, or maybe sit in the sauna, and then if I'm not feeling it, I can leave. That's what I tell myself. The catch is, of course, I work out nearly every single time once I get there. Once you're standing in the weight room, you're dressed, you're ready to go, you think to yourself like, okay, it would be pretty silly not to work out now, wouldn't it? So how do we apply this to reading? Well, we just show up. If you don't feel like reading, that's fine. Just tell yourself, I'm just gonna grab the book. I'm just gonna sit down in my chair. I'm just going to open it up to the first page. You'll feel silly for not reading at that point, right? And then if you read and you can only get through one page, heck, one sentence, fine. You can check off your habit tracker, right? You've done what you needed to do for the day. This is a marathon, not a sprint. So you're probably thinking, all right, fine, but That would take me forever to read a book if I did it that way. And you'd be right, some super dense books will take you a while. But if you want to massively increase the volume of pages you're reading in the meantime, I have one simple hack. Tactic number 3, read another book. I know what you're thinking. How is reading 2 books at once supposed to make reading easier? Let me explain. All right, let me explain with another gym analogy. So weightlifters have something called a drop set, and it works like this. Let's say I'm doing curls with a 25-pound dumbbell, and I get tired. Most people would stop here. But if you're a genius like me, you pick up the 10-pound dumbbell and keep cranking. Here's the thing. I was genuinely too tired to do any more reps with the 25. But I had enough energy left in the tank to squeeze out some reps in the 10 because it's lighter weight. But if I would have stopped, I would have lost out on all that extra potential. So let's apply this to reading. If you're working your way through a particularly dense book, I'd recommend having a lighter book to supplement it. For example, I'm currently reading Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific by Friedrich Engels, but it's pretty dense. The language, it's a little archaic, and it takes some thinking to understand the historical context of the arguments he's making. So I'm also reading A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. That way, when I tap out on Engels, I can switch to something lighter instead of just quitting. Because of this one simple tactic, I probably read 50% more than I would have otherwise. No joke. So there's my 4 tactics to build a solid reading habit. The only problem is none of it matters if you don't remember what you read. And that leads me to step 3, retention. You can read as much theory as you want. Seriously, you could read Capital in a weekend if you just sat down and scanned all the words in sequence like a psychopath. But reading theory isn't our goal. Learning theory is. And there's a big difference there. Let me guess, when you sit down to read, things start to click. It actually kind of makes sense. But as soon as you get up, it's like somebody poked a hole in the bottom of your brain and all the knowledge just rushes out. I'm here to tell you, you're not stupid. You just don't know how to learn effectively. If you want to understand and remember theory on a deep level, I'm going to give you 4 rapid-fire ways to do that. 1, take notes. Don't just summarize. Ask questions, even if you don't know the answer. That way, you're not just reading the text, you're actually engaging with it. Plus, that way you'll have a handwritten file to refer back to if you need a refresher. 2, audiobooks are your friend. Sometimes. In general, the denser the book, the better off you'll be just reading on paper. But audiobooks are a great way to get a lot of light reading under your belt. All you have to do is substitute some of your brain rot podcasts for a book. 3, don't sleep on recaps. I know what you're thinking. Why would I want to listen to a summary of a book I've already read? I used to think that way as well. But now, one of the first things I do when I finish a book is to look for a summary. If a book is worth reading, it's worth really diving into it. And one of the best ways to get comfortable with a work is to get other people's perspectives on it, even if you disagree with them, especially if you disagree with them. This isn't a religion, it's a science. Let's actually think through things, right? Not just dogmatically assume that we know them. 4, teaching. Albert Einstein, socialist by the way, once said, if you can't explain it simply, then you don't understand it well enough. Ironically, one of the most powerful ways to learn is to teach others. Because when somebody asks you basic questions, you realize how much you know very quickly. There's only one issue. In order to access this super powerful way of learning, you need somebody to mentor. And to do that, you'll need to become part of a group. Which leads me to step 4, putting it into practice. Organizing is probably the single best thing you could do to level up your understanding of theory. It seems contradictory, right? If you're involved in an organization, you'd think you'd have less time to read. But actually, I think that getting involved will motivate you to read like nothing else, because you'll actually have something to apply it to. Let's stop beating around the bush here. Why do we read theory? We read theory so that we can change the world in a positive direction. So if you're not part of a group, if you're not actually doing political action, then yeah, what are you doing reading theory? You're just giving yourself homework, nerd. And here's another reason why joining a group is so awesome in the context of theory. If you're a little one-man island, then the entire impetus is on you to learn everything. But if you're part of a group, then you can start to specialize. Maybe you really like botany and plants and you want to learn how to make a community garden. Maybe you're the labor guy and you want to learn about labor struggles of the past. Maybe you're into women's issues or Palestinian liberation. Whatever calls to you, you can actually develop that because you're part of a team of people with different skill sets. It's like in one of those video games where everybody is a different class and they have different abilities, except it's not a waste of time. It's actually meaningful, real work. Everything we do is building up to the point where we're actually organizing and getting involved in our communities. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, Harper, I'm ready to read, but I don't know what to read. If you're just starting out, let me offer you a suggestion. It's not like hardcore political philosophy, it's just a little bit of history. This is a book that made me realize that everything I thought I knew about the Cold War was wrong. In fact, the Cold War wasn't cold at all. There was a massive campaign of sabotage, torture, assassinations, and repressions that the US carried out on the Third World, and it hardly ever gets talked about. You can go read that book. It's called The Jakarta Method by Vincent Bevins, but if you want a nice visual primer on this secret history of the 20th century, I made a full video going over it. You can watch that right now. A better world is possible.